afternoon, Helen, and good afternoon, everybody. It's just fantastic to have you all here. We're actually getting quite a long way into our Eldership series. I think you're number 8, Merv having been number 7, but Helen, you're number 8.
Great, thank you. It's so great to be here, Kate. Thank you so much.
It's a great joy to have you. It's so important because it's such a big aspect of wellness and eldership to bring end-of-life doulas into the equation. And wow, it seems that a lot of other people think so too. We've got quite a few people who've joined us today. So thanks everyone else for coming along. Before we get started, I'd love to invite us all to just take a moment and take a big deep breath and feel yourself sink into your sitting bones or your feet if you're standing, and just be exactly where you are right now, with the sounds, the smells, the temperature, the light, and feeling yourself in flow with everything that's around you. The magnetic force field of the earth, the sky moving in and out of you with each breath, the waters flowing deep within you. And in this context, let's together pay our respect to the lands, waterways, seas, and skies in which we are coming to this meeting today, and give deep thanks to the elders, and traditional custodians, and those that have walked here before us, who've sung up country and been in rich relationship to country, part of country, and custodialship of country. The theme this month for SoulAdvisor is gratitude, and in whatever way, I'd just like you to feel that gratitude for all that we've been given to take care of, to practice stewardship of. And setting the intention that our talk here today and all of this Eldership series, and in fact everything that SoulAdvisor does, will contribute to the health and happiness and wellness of this planet. Thank you. And so we say, welcome, Helen.
Hi, everybody. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here and also in such awesome company. Thank you.
It's beautiful that we also have quite a few of the elders that have joined us previously. We've got Merv, who was with us yesterday. We've got Pauline, who was with us, I don't know which day anymore, Pauline. It's all getting a bit of a blur. And we've also got Jane, who we will have coming to talk with us in another few days. So the extent and the depth and the breadth of the experiential information that everyone's been sharing has been incredible. Really incredible, each one in its own way. Merv, yesterday your sharing was just so inspirational, and I felt the wind in my sails. Thank you. So, Helen, you've had such a busy year, but I'd love, before we get into what your year has been and your life, in fact, I'd love to just talk a little bit about who you are, what your position is in the world. What are you, how are you defining what you're doing in the world right now?
Oh gosh, student, student, teacher, end-of-life doula, Reiki practitioner and teacher, coach, mentor, student. I'm going to keep mentioning that. And managing director is one of the hats I wear, which I'm like, oh my goodness me. And you know, I am the founder of Preparing the Way, which is End of Life Doula training, Australia and New Zealand. And we've developed the world's first nationally accredited Cert 4 in End of Life Doula services, which is a major game changer in the space. And, you know, one of our trainers in the Cert 4 was in Fiji last week. And a woman from Canada when she learned what she did, that she was a doula and a teacher, and she said, I've heard about the Cert 4. Like, when's it coming to Canada? And I'm like, whoa, so word gets around. Next year, we are going to be pursuing delivering the Cert 4 in the USA. We have approval now to deliver it in New Zealand and the USA. But right now, we're focusing on really embedding it in Australia and doing that. So I have many hats and juggle a lot. And I think, honestly, truthfully, student is one of the biggest ones.
I really love that you've highlighted being a student as one of the biggest ones. Many people, especially at the earlier end of their lives, feel that by the time they reach their elder years and become an elder, that they'll be able to hang up their hat and have people revere them for what they are, but they never are anything. Us, or we as elders, never are anything. It's a continual state of evolution, and bringing people along in that evolution. So being a student, yay. What kind of joy do you get from being a student, if you had to define it?
Oh, look, most recently, I've just had a month where I've been with my teacher, and my learning curve became a spiral. So, whoop, and like it felt honestly like going right back to the beginning. And I think one of the given that we're in a series of gratitude, honestly, that was one of the biggest takeaways for me. And that the gift of studying with a teacher, of showing up where I'm not all I can be, and of being willing to let that go and live in the exposure of that, if you like, and the true gift that is. It might be damn uncomfortable, and it might have a whole lot of other feelings that go with it, but when you can just step back from that and allow it to be what it is and receive the love and the gift that is, I think for me, that's the biggest thing right now is gratitude of being, number one, in the position where I have a teacher that cares enough for me and my development and what's possible for me to deliver in the world, that is going to authentically invest that in me. And also my willingness to go there, that's also to be acknowledged. And then to be able then to come back into preparing the way after this month away, where the team have just been amazing and held preparing the way like so beautifully, and all of our doulas, and without supposedly Helen at the helm, and guess what, they did a damn really good job. And so gratitude for that. And then I can come back and share my openings and awakenings and learnings and quickenings with them. That's an extraordinary privilege to be able to do. And that's just what I'm really present to at the end of this year and this month and this time. Yeah, really.
You've just done the most beautiful job of describing eldership as part of lineage. It's the receiving and the giving and the receiving and then the giving and the receiving and the giving that goes on. And that happens both. We also receive from those we teach and hold, don't we? We also give, hopefully, to the people that are giving us the knowledge. And so that beautiful flow through lineage is such a gift. And
yeah, and I think, a couple of things I'd like to say about that, and just so I don't forget. One of them is what happened in a doula training just last weekend, and it's about where supposedly I'm sitting there as the teacher, right? But also in the training was another very experienced doula who was coming to do our training, and her name's Jackie, and she's from Brisbane, and I know you know her, Judith. And Jackie's extraordinary. And some of the other doulas who were there said, "Oh my God, it's like having two trainers," right? And I learned so much. So, I learned not only from Jackie, but I learned from the other doulas, because, and it's the truth is, if we're willing, no matter how experienced a teacher we are, we're going to learn from everybody because everyone's unique and everyone's got unique perspectives and unique experiences. And, you know, we've trained almost 600 people in our intensive course, which is the 4-day intensive. And so I've got to listen to, and one of the things everyone does is they tell a story of an end-of-life experience up close and personal to them, and they tell it in detail, and then we look at that from a range of perspectives and we unpack it, and it's a very healing and transformational process. And I've had the privilege of listening to 600 of these direct personal experiences, let alone then what I've done with my client work and family and friends and people I've supported at end of life. And so to be able to sit in that space with all of those wisdoms, because one of the things we do with their stories is go, well, okay, you had that experience and, you know, that you felt frightened in that experience. So what does that teach you? What does that teach you about life or about end of life that you can take from this experience, put it in your doula kit, and take it with you? And an example of that is, you know, an experience I had, my very first experience of death up close and personal was with a close friend, Bruce. And this is back in the early 80s. And he lived with HIV and subsequently passed with AIDS. And I was sitting on the end of his bed one day massaging his feet because it helped the pain in his head. And I was crying. And he looked down the bed at me and he said, "What's up with you?" And I said, well, thinking I'll be honest, you know, God, oh God, love me. Thinking I'll be very honest. And I said, well, I'm sad. You know, you're my bestie. You're dying. There's nothing I can do about it. You know, I'm sad. And he goes, well, I'm going to swear. He goes, well, you better cut that shit out. I'm not dead until I've breathed my last breath. Until then, I'm alive. So get over it. And honestly, it was like someone threw a bucket of cold water over me. But it transformed that experience, albeit uncomfortable, totally transformed my relationship to people living with and approaching end of life. Because right up until that last breath has exchanged for the next breath of what's next, right up until then, that person is alive. And yes, their capacity might be diminishing, and yes, and yes, and yes, but they are alive and they are of value and they are precious and they're having such a precious experience themselves. And so the privilege of being present to that. And so, you know, those difficult things can sometimes be our greatest, you know, teachers. And yeah, I can't remember what the original question was, but I went off on that one, as I do.
Yes, well, thank goodness you do. That's what makes it so interesting.
Yeah. Oh, I know, it was Lineage. I know, it was Lineage. And then I wanted to share, because the other side of my passion, my two passions in my life are working with people in that circle of life. But also Reiki, of course. And I did Reiki back in 1985, and I got to study with a grandmaster, Reverend Beth Gray, who was the first person to bring Reiki to Australia, and very close in lineage to the original founder, Dr. Matteo Usui. So it was very much lineage there about, you know, in those days, Oriental traditions like that were passed orally from master to student. Now, of course, you know, there's Reiki books and you can do Reiki online, and, you know, it's shifted. But that lineage is ever so important, and because you want to know that the teaching has handed down in truth and it's remained pure and distilled. And that's what I was always taught about Reiki, was keep it very simple, you know. Yeah.
So many points that you've brought up, you know. But let's keep on the theme of lineage for a minute. And I know that Pauline, we've spoken a little about the lineage basis of yoga in the talk that we had together. and the lack of lineage, perhaps, or the dilution of lineage that has happened in more modern ways of imparting the information. So, you know, that rich lineage that we come from, be it within a family, be it within a discipline, be it within an organization, be it however, that rich lineage provides opportunities for us to continue to grow, doesn't it? Because if we're in that lineage and we're in that flow, then we continue to be able to take that information, distill it, pass it on, take that information, distill it, pass it on. If we're just getting the external knowledge and there's nobody to talk that over with or to hold us when things get scary, because they do when you take on any body of knowledge or you go through life or whatever you do, then it gets a little bit tricky. So it's really beautiful that End of Life Douling is a lineage by the sound of things, and that you're in that lineage.
Yeah, I think so. It's something that we're really present to, you know, at Preparing the Way, is that our doulas, most people who come to our training, and when I say most, I would very comfortably say at least 90% of people who come to our training say they feel some calling, right? It's not something people come to and go, oh, well, that looks a bit interesting, I'll give that a go. You know, most people run from the conversation, death and dying. So these people come and go, I don't know, there's something, I feel like I've got something to give here. Or they talk about feeling comfortable around end of life and and aging and all of the, you know, all of that goes with that. And so, and it's an emerging industry, right, as a profession, right? It's been going on for thousands of years. People doing this work, and often it was the woman of the village, right? Whenever someone was getting born, go and get Mrs. So-and-so, or whenever someone was dying, go and get Mrs. So-and-so, you know, and it was handled in that community. So it is a community service, really. So what we're looking at doing in Preparing the Way is, how do we bring it back to community? So how do we get up under our doulas and empower them in a world that sometimes resists this role? You know, in some of the conventional care settings are like, oh, don't know about end of life doulas. Oh, right. So we're getting resistant, rather than being like, wow, an extra heart, an extra set of hands, non-medical, non-clinical, who can help offer support and, you know, to people. Wouldn't you think that would be welcomed?
Why
Wouldn't you think?
Why not?
Well, do you know, look, I could wax rhetoric about that, but the truth is, Kate, why is anything resisted, really? My experience, and I can only speak from mine, I resist usually what I don't understand, what I'm frightened of, what seems threatening in some way. That's what I resist. So I think we all have to look to ourselves. You know, these days, of course, it's about qualifications and pieces of paper, and it's about policies and procedures and protocols and all of that. And look, they have their place, because they are about, ultimately, I think at heart, they're about keeping people safe. But maybe we're trying to keep the wrong people safe. Maybe we want to really focus on keeping our community and our elders and those who are unwell or aging or grieving, or, you know, maybe that's who we want to keep safe. And so to me, doulas have the opportunity to do that. And we can work alongside the professionals in the space, those people that are experts in the medical and nursing and allied health world. You know, we don't want to compete. We want to contribute. And that's, you know, where we come from, you know.
Yeah, and it's a very specific kind of role that end of life doulas perform, it seems to me, from what I'm learning from you.
Yes.
And from others who we've met along the way at SoulAdvisor. But it's a very specific role, and it really does champion the story that people have had in getting to where they're at, and then their continuing story. So meaning that they're going to pass away, and then they're going to leave the family there.
Mm.
End of life doulas are still, it seems to me, engaged after the point of death.
They can be, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, or that you'll have to explain a little more about the 8 stages of dying, was it?
Yeah. So I love that you've mentioned that. So Natural Grace, who we work with very closely and have majorly contributed to our training, Natural Grace, they are holistic, provide holistic funeral and after death care, and they really are masters at what they do, and they are elders personified in terms of the ethic of their service and the holistic nature of what they do. So Libby Maloney, who's one of the principals there, created this model of living with 10 stages. And it really talks about that we start where we're living our lives well. And then maybe a diagnosis or aging enters the picture. And then we're living with our aging or our diagnosis. And then the next stage is that maybe, we're getting treatment and things. Maybe we go into palliative care. Then we enter the active dying stage. Then we actually pass the body. Then after that, then there is after death home-based care. Then there are funeral rites and ceremony. And then there's care for the living. So there's all of these stages. And, I was just talking to Libby recently, and work that I've been doing with my teacher is talking about this circle of life that you could say of this life, like of Helen, this life, my entry point was birth and my exit point will be my death, but of the circle, right? But a lot of traditions, Eastern tradition, I've done a study of a lot of different ones, that a lot of traditions talk about, and faiths and religions talk about, that there is something else, that the last breath out in this life is indeed the first breath in to something, be it consciousness or whether it's reincarnation, doesn't matter what it is, because all of it's beliefs, right? And we actually can't prove technically any of them. What we can prove now scientifically, because of work that's been done, and one of the leaders in Australia is Dr. Michael Barbato, who's done an enormous amount of work around what actually happens to consciousness at the time of death. And there's this thing, that gamma wave that goes through the brain and lights it up. And this has been now scientifically measured. So there's this, I call it like an enlightening, or an awakening, or there's some lit up, and that's also been found in very experienced Buddhist monks doing metta meditation, metta meaning loving kindness, which is an expanding of the heart out, and holding the universe in love. They have this similar gamma wave go through their brains. So who's to say, I can't prove any of it. However, I have beliefs. We all have our own beliefs. Each person at end of life has theirs or has none, but that's a belief too, right? So to me, as an end of life doula, my job, it's not about me telling anyone what happens, what doesn't happen, what they shouldn't do. We don't give advice as end of life.
So much, Helen. Does anybody else have any other questions that they'd like to ask Helen at this point?
Hey, Merv.
Hi, Helen. I looked up the definition of doula, and it said a woman usually untrained. Was this the impetus behind you going down the line of certification? I'm guessing the certification that you did was for training. And I've already sent you a Facebook message while you're offline to have a chat in more depth about it next week, because I'm insanely jealous of anyone who goes to the trouble to do this. But was the impetus behind it to get that legitimization, and how has it changed your organization already?
So yes, it was. It really was about, so yes, it's always been done by, if we were just talking about women in the village or the like. And then there was some training that started, but it was fairly grassroots, fairly sort of a bit left of center. Doulaing, originally the word is Greek, and it meant slave. We've upgraded it a little, modernized it a little to mean person of service. And there are men and women who are end of life doulas. Generally, there's birth doulas, predominantly women, of course. And so what emerged, Merv, was that the fact is 80%, over 80% of people die either in an aged care facility or in a hospital, higher percentage in a hospital. We want to have doulas wherever people are dying. And it became evident that for us to have, if you like, more credibility, to get more respect for the service that we're actually providing. We provide support, emotional, mental, physical, practical, spiritual, on all levels. So we're being there with people, we're accompanying, we're not experts. Some of us have other qualifications, of course, and bring those to it. But generally, it was about bringing a legitimacy, bringing a qualification to it, that, if you like, gave it some credibility, really, and that would have people in other professional roles sit up and go, oh, okay, there is some merit to this. Because unfortunately, in the system and the conditioning that we've created, unless there's a piece of paper involved, a lot of people don't give things and skills a credit as they are due. So that was it. Has it changed our organization? Oh my goodness. People say to me, if you had known what it was going to take, would you have ever started it? And I have to be like, I really, on one hand, yes, because it was needed. On another hand, not in a million. And this is truthfully, we've invested almost $500,000 to get it to the place we're at, and that's the truth. It's taken everything, because it's like when you're breaking ground, you've got to dig through the rocks, so it takes a lot of effort. The infrastructure we've had to put in the company, the staff we've had to have, the learning spiral that we're now on, the refining we're having to do, the upgrading of systems we're having to do. So it's actually massive, Merv, and it's so worthwhile, and it's taking so much from so many of us. Our first cohort of students are the most patient, incredible people, because they're like us. We're pedaling furiously, dealing with things. They're responding. They're giving us feedback. They're really helping us shape it. So we're very, very grateful to all of them. Yeah. Does that answer that for you, Merv? Great. And yes, happy to catch up next week. That'd be awesome. Thanks.
Yeah, and so, perhaps one of the roles of being an elder, or having the amount of experience that you've had in the in end of life, which sounds like it started quite early in your life. How many years, before we go on, how many years have you actually been involved in end of life?
30, over 30.
30. Oh,
yeah.
So yeah, the Japanese say that after 30 years, you're an expert. So thank you. Thank you, Sensei.
Honestly, I have this practice, right, that I do whenever I'm going to visit a client or a family. And I imagine myself when I get to the door, whether it's a hospital room or a home, with the force of a waterfall, I have this whoosh of light wash over me, and it's to do two things. On one hand, it's to, dump all your stuff at the door, right? So I walk in there. But the biggest thing and the most important thing is to wipe away everything I think I know, so that I can walk in there and meet them heart to heart. Because one of the things we talk about as doulas, we've got to meet people where they are, not where we think they should be, not where they could be, but where are you today, right now, where are you? Because that may have no relationship to where they were this morning or yesterday or whatever. Yeah.
That paradox of being an elder. So there's two things there. One is that waterfall you're talking about, where we enter in a state of innocence and a state of studentship and a state of reception. And being able to hold that energy at the same time that you're creating a worldwide phenomena of telling people exactly what's happening,
Yes.
And being the teacher and instructing public institutions about how to respect you, et cetera, holding those two things as an elder, the pathway forward and leading that pathway forward at the same time as holding that innocence and capacity to learn. Wow, being an elder, hey?
Yeah, it's very true that, and you know, I consider, you know, I get called a leader, and frankly, it scares me, you know, because I'm like, oh God, that's a huge responsibility. And I also get the truth of it. And to me, it's a bit like being, you know, as I talk about the Cert 4, it's a world first. It's groundbreaking, as a lot of our elders that have been a part of this thing, you know, they've started a long time ago. They were part of the beginning of a lot of these different movements and or practices. Like I remember when I first did Reiki back in 1985, people were like, Ray, what? Whereas now most people have done it, or their mum has, or people have heard about it. Same with doulaing. Doula what? Now people are like, oh yeah, I've heard of them. Do you know what I mean? So it's you're educating, and that's what I say to our doulas when they do their training, is one of your primary responsibilities is education. Every conversation you have, end of life doula, end of life doula, and you're educating the people that this role exists, what's possible from it, and therefore we're making change. And I say eventually we'll meet critical mass, you know, where and one of the goals is Julie Fletcher from Doula Connections, another colleague that we work very closely with. You know, Julie talks about we have to get doula as well known as nurse. And that will happen. It will happen. And then there's a whole different game at play. But we're on the road to that right now. Yeah.
I think that swings us right back to a question we were having before, the technical difficulties. And that question was about the difference between a doula and an accredited professional. So, you know, the thing about that is that it has changed a lot out there. I know for myself, I started being a massage therapist at age 17. Back in those days, people just assumed there was prostitution involved, you know, like, and it's taken a long, long time till that started to swing. But that was a good 40-something years ago now. And massage therapy is totally seen as a legitimate and wonderful profession, and how much good it can do. There's lots of research that supports it, etc., etc. So we were talking just before the technical difficulty about the difference between a doula and an accredited health profession.
Yeah.
You're heading towards being an accredited health profession.
Well, we are an accredited profession. So accredited, so health professionals, there's a body in Australia called APRA, and they are, if you like, registered practitioners. So nurses, OTs, dietitians, physios. So they are people that are recognised as clinical professionals. Now we, at this point, and even we were talking just yesterday about a woman who has a master's in counselling, right? She's got the cred, will not be accepted into APRA because she hasn't got a graduate diploma or some other level of something. So that's their criteria. Doulas will never be accepted into that. And, you know, we were having a conversation yesterday with the people in the Cert 4, and I made the comment, you know, that was raised about how, therefore, we would never really be accepted to be employed by a hospital. And I said, good. I don't want to be employed by a hospital, because the minute you are employed by someone and you sign a contract saying, yes, I'm your employee, I agree to follow all of your policies and procedures, there goes your power for advocacy right there. And so as a doula, one of our big tools in our toolkit is the advocacy of standing up and supporting people speak for themselves, as well as speaking for them if they are no longer able to speak for themselves, and that we've been empowered to do that. So that's one of the biggest differences. And thanks, you know, for asking that, Kerry, that it is one of the biggest differences. It's about doulas are not, we're non-clinical, non-medical. We do not give advice. We don't diagnose. We don't recommend starting or stopping medications or treatments. We do not administer medication. We are about helping people be educated, know their options, make choices that are aligned with their values, not get told. I've actually worked with a family who were with a doctor, and the doctor said, unless you follow this path, I won't be working with you. So there was no autonomy. You know, I had a client a couple of weeks ago ring me, and this gentleman has a terminal illness. He has a palliative care team, but he had this particular incident happen at home. His wife took him to the emergency room because he needed care. So they immediately start a process, and they were going to admit him, and they were going to do this and that and the other thing. And he'd been very clear about not wanting those type of interventions. So and she rang me, freaking out, going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And I said, you know what we need to do is immediately contact your PAL care team. And then you get your PAL care team to deal with the hospital. And sure enough, the PAL care team rang because it was professional to professional. They would listen. And so he was back home within 2 hours, right? But had that PAL care team, they wouldn't listen to her. They wouldn't listen to him, and they didn't listen to me. Do you get what I'm saying? So that's where, and please don't misunderstand me. I have deep respect for all of the medical and nursing. We live in such a blessed time. We have the great karmas, I believe, to live in a time of great medicine and great procedures and great life-giving support. And it's a system. And we have so many deeply experienced nurses come to do our training because they want to return to the service of their heart. Rather than, I had a palliative care nurse in tears in my training saying, Helen, by the time I medicate on time, roll them on time, fill out my paperwork, I can't sit with the person. I can't hold a hand. I can't comfort a family. So it's breaking their heart. And we all know what our precious medical and nursing staff and allied health staff have been through in the last few years, and the burnout that's happening and the crisis there is in staffing. Doulas to me are an obvious possibility of bridging gaps in service provision, in aged care, in community care, in hospitals. So yeah, that's why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a beautiful position to be in, to be bringing the heart back into the process. The systems that we have are broken. Yes, there's a lot of incredible knowledge and incredible application of knowledge out there, but they're a bit broken. And I guess the way that that they are broken is that there isn't any time, because it's all come down to who gets paid what for which hours. Yes. And as much as people like that beautiful palliative nurse want to,
yes,
they can't, they can't shift it because they're stuck in that same system. So
it's about budgets, and it's about patient staff ratios, and there's so many constraints and policies and procedures, and there's so many constraints on them. And that's why, whereas the thing with doulas is we can spend the time. We can sit and have the conversations. We can sit silent and just be there. And do that sort of more emotional, spiritual labor, if you like, right? It's not about us having the answers. It's about us helping people find, well, here's all your options, pros and cons, here's them all. What there feels the right thing for you and your family, what aligns with your values and what you want, knowing that you can change your mind tomorrow if you need to. And then, my creed is this: is it legal? Is it safe? And is it possible? And if it ticks those 3 boxes, anything goes.
Beautiful. Has anybody out there got any questions before we carry on? If you do, maybe just put them in the chat or put your hand up and I'll just keep checking. But otherwise, we'll keep raving on. So
I could do that for hours.
I guess one of the things that makes what you have to say and share with us so potent is that you're dealing with that part of the cycle of life that's really quite potent in terms of, well, as they say, the full stop defines the sentence. So that moment of passing through, passing on, however you like to frame it, does frame the whole of life, doesn't it? So it becomes very, very potent what happens in those from the time of diagnosis to the time of departure. That's an incredible part of life. But eldership is also usually taken up in that part of life. People know they're dealing with a finite resource. This person is not going to be around forever. They've accumulated all this knowledge. How do we make the most of that potent period of time? And I wonder if you've got anything to say about that. Does it relate to story? Is there some other way?
100%. That was the first word that I was going to say, is stories and listening. You know, one of the things we talk about as doulas, one of the biggest skills we have in our toolkit is our capacity, and we practice listening and inviting the sharing of stories, and, you know, doing legacy work. So helping people, do you want to leave, you know, videos or letters or something written? People doing biographies, be they through art or through the written word or recording, you know, capturing people's stories. And I think, you know, there are people who just love being in that space with our elders, and that, it's something that I would love to see, because there are so many what are called elder orphans, you know, elders who are now alone, you know, with the baby boomer statistics that are coming through, which are really very extreme, really, what's coming. So, you know, we need to have people that are wanting to be with and listen to those stories and capture those stories and share those stories, you know.
Yeah, I remember a few months ago, Helen, when you and I were talking in the context of a panel that we were on, and there was another wonderful woman in your community who came forward and was telling the story of being an end-of-life doula when one of her clients recently had passed on and had left two sons behind her, and she was encouraging those sons to tell the story of their mother's life at the funeral. And they said there's really nothing to say. She had a pretty boring life. That shocked me terribly.
Yes.
And I think, you know, in a very, very important part of eldership is story, and the capacity to be able to share story so that people, as they move through whichever lineage it is, are inspired, and have something to move around in their mind to help them move on through that. It made me very sad.
Well, and I think too, you know, it's what I hear in that is the missing that is there for many people of the awakening of their gratitude. And so, and I don't want to speak for the sons because I don't know them and I wasn't part of that scenario, but just hypothetically, you know, I know for me that in my own life, there are things that I've taken for granted. And there are things that I've now come to see I've been blessed with. But at the time, it was like almost expected or entitled. And so that's part of my growth, is about discovering the inherent value in everything as I've grown. So I think, you know, and I remember in my own family, you know, I looked after my mum for 7 years. She lived with dementia, and I lived with her for 7 years during that. And you know, we had a member of our family really upset with a couple of other members of the family who, in their view, weren't doing enough, weren't contributing enough, weren't involved enough. And it absolutely didn't bother me, because I know that people do what they're ready for and able to do. And if they're not ready for that and they're not in the space to be able to do that, then dragging them kicking and screaming isn't really the plan either. Do you know, where's our tolerance? Where's our acceptance? Where's our gratitude for? Because here's the truth of it. Whenever I asked them directly to do something, it's done like that. And I didn't have those expectations. So I think for me, I've learned that it's really about, I have to value something to get the gold out of it. So maybe those two sons, for whatever reason, through their upbringing and their life experience, just had not had gratitude awoken, perhaps. You know, I don't know.
The awakening of gratitude. I hope that's what we're doing here today. I know that Merv has a question that's...
Oh, great.
Yeah, Helen, you mentioned a statistic before about 80% of people die within a medical or aged care facility. I've also heard the statistic that 80% of them want to die at home, but that's just not the reality. So I'm interested in your opinion on that, but also because 80% of your potential work is within this constricted system that is very highly regulated, do you get much pushback from the health professionals saying, get out of here, you're not qualified, leave us alone. We're dealing with this because this person is under our care, not yours. Do you get much of that? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, sure. So first of all, the stats are somewhere between 70 and 80% of people say they want to die at home, but around 14 to 16% get to. So there's a big missing there. Now, what we do have to take into account that there are some people who may want to die at home, and I've had clients like this, but for lack of care provision at home, it's not been safe for them to be at home, or their medical needs have been such that they've not been able to be delivered effectively at home, or the caregivers are burnt out. Sometimes a person wants to die at home, but they don't want to burden their family, so they make the choice. Do you get what I'm saying? So there can be other reasons for that as well. And one of the things that I see, because the reality is with the baby boomer stats that are coming, there's a wave of aging, dying and death and grieving coming, the likes of which has never been seen on the planet. So death has to go back into our homes because there just won't be enough infrastructure. I heard someone saying yesterday that, there's going to need to be another, is it 3,000 or 6,000, some like huge thousands of palliative care staff needed, in the next, 8 years or something. And there just isn't the capacity to get them, right? So anyway, I just think doulas can help that transitioning. And we still need palliative care, community-based palliative care services to do the nursing and the medical and the medication and deal with that, but the doulas can fill a lot of the gaps in that service provision. So then getting back to how are we welcomed. So it's changing, Merv, I'm very happy to say. There's times that I've gone in with a client and they're like, you're a what? You're a what? I'm an end-of-life doula. What's that? I've never heard of that. What do you do? And they're protective and they're resistant. And look, and honestly, understandably, they're protective, I think, of their clients, their patients, which, I call them clients, but patients. They're protective of, well, hang on, we don't want any trouble here. We don't want any risk here. We don't want any bad things to happen here, which good on them for having that. But what I would generally do, I really work, and I train allied doulas, we work in collaboration, not pushing up, but just being like, look, I'm here to work alongside you. The family have employed me. I'm here to work with you. I don't want to get in your way. I'm not going to be, doing anything. I'll come and talk to you. And often, usually after 3 or 4 times when they've encountered us, they go, you know what, she's okay. She's okay, that one. You can talk to her. She's all right. So it's just education, Merv, and that's why, we also talking to people about, we've got training and we've got accredited training, we've got non-accredited training. We're training our people that preparing the way to be very responsible in the space, to have, insurance, to have police checks, to have working with vulnerable people. Do you get what I'm saying? Like, we want to fit in, and there's a code of conduct for non-registered health professionals. And we sort of fit under that, which is about privacy, confidential, all those things that you would expect, and a code of conduct that we're guided by. So we work under that as well. And it's swinging, Merv. It's slow. There are people who are pushed back. And honestly, I can honestly say the biggest pushback we get is from palliative care nurses. I was having a conversation, this is a couple of years ago now, pre-Cert 4, and with a CMO, so the chief medical officer of a big Melbourne teaching hospital. And he was really keen on the idea of doulas coming in, working and filling some of those gaps and being with the people who were there and their families more, and supporting them, to allow the nurses to do more nursing. And where it got stopped? In the PAL care unit. That's where the idea got stopped. The boss wanted it. And again, it's just education. And I said to him, I said, look, if eventually this were to come about and we've got our Cert 4, and I said, here's the thing, unless you are willing to have training go from the very head of the hospital all the way down through all of the layers, I'm not putting any doulas in here, because I will not put doulas into a hostile environment. People have to know and be educated about what this is. And that's what it's all about. It's education, education, education. Yeah.
I've never, ever heard the term non-registered health professional.
Yeah, I can send you the document. What state are you in, Merv?
Quite a fragile state at the moment, but I'll get through it.
When we talk next week, I can send you one. There's one from the states of Australia. Yeah,
that'll be good. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
And that's something that you just touched on then, which was time. It takes time, doesn't it? And I guess when you're 20, you're pretty keen for everything to happen right tomorrow, and think you'll bring it about. And then by the time you get to our age, you start to understand that proper change takes time. The seed has to grow, and that you can't go implementing change. It has to basically take root. So that, for me, is probably one of the bigger parts of eldership, that wiseness about time. And you've been, how long, for example, has it been since you thought, a Cert 4 would be a good idea?
Well, I started that vision hit when I first started, like fairly quickly. I would say 6 years ago. And I was a one-girl show for the first 5 years of Preparing the Way. And it wasn't until we went into our more limited circumstances in 2020 that I was basically housebound, and then had to pivot and put all my training online, because I was doing it face-to-face till then and traveling around the countryside, which of course meant that any money that was coming in was going back out. But then, of course, staying at home, not having all those expenses, meant that there was some money coming in. People had time to study. Our bookings went really strong during COVID, and meant that there was resources then for me to hire extra people and go, oh God, okay, now is the time. We can do this, because I'm not spending half my life traveling around the countryside and in and out of hotels and airplanes, So that was the gift of that time for us. That's what happened, what brought it about. Yeah.
And nobody could see that COVID was about to hit us. So the vision has to wait for its time. You don't
exactly right.
The drought.
And I think the other thing too that I would like to just say about the timing is also me realizing that I was Helen, doing Helen's thing, and I'm teaching doulas and just me. But now there's 12 on our team. And we now have a Cert 4. We have a responsibility. This is an 18-month course. We have responsibility that I had to then go, all right, this is no longer about Helen. This is now about preparing the way. When the I became we are doing this now as a team, as a collective, with the collaborators that we have and the other businesses we work alongside. And then I had to go, well, Helen, you've got your own end-of-life plans in place, but what about preparing the way? Because back then, had something happened to me, it would have all fallen over. So I had to then put end-of-life plans in place for preparing the way. So it's now set up that I could disappear tomorrow. I haven't got time to, but I could. If I disappeared tomorrow, that preparing the way would just continue without missing a beat. And I'm very proud of that, because that to me is sustainability. That I've got all of these visions and dreams, and I will continue on those until the day I expel my last breath and take my next breath into my next adventure. I will do that. However, the dream is going to go on long after I've breathed my last.
Beautiful stewardship. Really
well,
beautiful.
That's a big part of it, right? Has to be.
Carrie,
got to be willing to let it go.
Yeah, absolutely. The release. So much part of that last breath out. Okay. What was your question, Carrie?
Hey, Carrie.
Hi. It's just so fascinating listening to you speak.
Thank you, Carrie.
I had wanted to be a birth doula quite a while ago, and situations have happened in life that have led me not down that track, and that's something that I want to be able to do later on in life, I guess. I'm pushing 50 now, so I'm leaving it a bit late.
No, I'm 63 and just hitting the straps, so don't worry about it. You're good. You got plenty.
Awesome.
Plenty.
That message before about time, Kate, I was like, oh my gosh, time. Oh my gosh, how much do I have left? I don't even know. What am I doing? I better pull my finger out. My question is, and I think there's probably a couple involved there, is that my mother she's at home, and my dad has just gone through cancer treatment, and he's her carer. She's got everything kind of wrong with her. She's so bound up in all this limiting beliefs and things that have stored up in her body, and she's all arthritic, and she's just not really in a good way.
Yeah.
I know that they're going to end up probably in a nursing home. And like you said, like with the pressure from the professionals to do certain things that they might not be wanting to do, if like to get a doula in at the end of life would have to come from them, wouldn't it? It can't come from a caring daughter. It has to come from them, doesn't it? They have to want it.
There are not necessarily. There are people that I work with, like for example, there are clients I have that you would be my client. So
Right.
I would be supporting you in as you support your people. Because not everyone wants to know about a doula. Someone's like, I'm getting close to the end of my life. I don't want someone I don't know coming in. Get away. But sometimes I work directly with the family or the partner or the whomever. And I'm providing support, their options, education, resources, and listening there. So that is one thing. And having had to, place my mother in an aged care facility, which is not what she wanted, and she had dementia and a number of comorbidities and different things. It's a bloody big deal. It's a bloody big deal. And so, there will be support that will be of help to you. And these days, there are a lot of great other resources out there that can help you navigate that whole thing, that can help you have those conversations. Like, again, we just don't know what's out there that is so helpful. And that's where a doula can become helpful, is to help you know what are the resources out there and how can you, navigate this, because it's a big thing to navigate. It really is, Kerry. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so I would be I guess because I'm the black sheep of the family and the one who's kind of wanting to change, make change, be the change, remember who you are.
Yeah, exactly. I love it.
And it's good to know that there's a support, I guess, out there for somebody who, because I'm not a doula, I don't really know. I was with, I have been at the bedside of a couple of people who have taken their last breath, and I've been the one just going, oh my God, I don't know what to do with it. How do I process this? So it's good to know that there are doulas out there who can help facilitate, I guess, and that being witness to somebody else watching one of their loved ones pass on. I think that how do we the thing is, how do you find end of life doulas? It's not something that is widely kind of known, I guess.
Well, Google's a damn fine thing.
But I think people don't even know that they they need one. Like, it's not even well known that there is that support out there.
Yeah. And this is where a lot of people are attending things like death cafes these days, and other sort of events like that. The Groundswell Project does a lot of education. There's a website called the End of Life Doula Directory that has doulas trained by a variety of people. We've actually got a page on our website, which is Find a Doula. There's Doula Connections. .com.au, that's Julie Fletcher. They have doulas that work with people online, as well as in on Zoom and things, as well as face to face. But, we've got doulas all over the country and in New Zealand. Thanks, Jane. See you later. That, are there and around. And these days, there's so much available on Google and finding them. But again, as you say, people have to know that the role exists, but it is spreading. The word is spreading. Yeah.
I suppose that's up to us then, isn't it, to have these conversations and
absolutely
get the word
that's
out there.
the whole point, Kerry. Yeah. And you know what, the other thing I'd love to say about you folks, and my heart goes, and one of the things that it's been have I got another couple of minutes, Kate?
We
I'm
have
just conscious of the
literally
time.
a couple of minutes, and yes, because we don't have any other questions other than Merv's one about being
Right.
online. So
yeah, great. Thank you. Because there's something I really would love to touch on, and Kerry, I think just was a perfect segue. Is, I talked before about the circle of life and, and the stages that are in that. And something that's become apparent to me, and we're going to be working on preparing the way on this circle of life set of wisdoms and sharing those in the new year and bringing them out into our training. But one of the big things that's hit me, I used to be quite almost evangelistic about, right, we've got to get people to confront death and we're all going to die and people have to wake up and all of that. And, just recently I've been, in the work I've been doing with my teaching, it's like, oh my God, how arrogant of me. And there's this thing called, the death positive movement or the positive death movement. When someone dies or is aging or getting very ill, someone's heart is nearly always breaking. How arrogant to be positive about that, right? I can get being death comfortable. That's different. But I think, inside of, the circle of life, it's like we, to me, as I said earlier, when I'm frightened, pushing me into something actually makes me resist it. I don't know about you, right? When we're frightened or threatened by something, we don't want to run towards it. We want to go, ooh. So what if in our approach to people at end of life, aging, grieving, we gentled that and we say, I understand your fear and I accept your fear and you don't have to change your fear. And let's see if we can have a conversation, just a conversation. And gentle people, giving people the room to feel their fear, because, there's that old saying, what we resist persists, right? Which pushes back. So, to me, it's about, taking the word death out of the conversation a bit, backing it up rather than sticking it right up front, because it's about, if that confronts people, and maybe that's going to push them away from this conversation. But if I can listen with my heart and speak and hear their fear and allow their fear and let people be where they are instead of they should be somewhere else according to my opinion, right? And I have plenty of them. Do you get what I'm saying? So I think, thinking about just your mum and dad, Kerry, is they are where they are. And the future's going to be whatever it is. And you don't know that yet. But you can be getting yourself educated, right? And this is for everybody. And this is what I teach. It's like, when I knew mum started to show signs of cognitive decline, I beat a path to Alzheimer's Victoria. I went in every course I could get my hands on, everything, because I wanted to be educated, because knowledge equals power. When I don't have enough information about something, and that was, Bruce taught me that one as well, with HIV and AIDS back in the 80s, that was terrifying, right? There was a lot of lies and misinformation and stigma and stuff. I was like, ooh, I was scared for myself, not Bruce. I had to go and get myself educated to find out, okay, I am safe around Bruce, actually, even though he's carrying the virus. And I have to be mindful. It's a bit like COVID. There are things we do or have the opportunity to do, if we want to reduce its possible impacts, right? Same. So it's the same now. Like, okay, you've got a future coming and you'll probably be involved in it, what's coming. So what can you do and get ahead of the game? That's how I approach things. And I think end of life makes a big difference to do that. And that's bringing the wisdom to you and stepping into it And then when those conversations come up and go, well, yeah, hey, I found out a bit of stuff, let me share that with you. Would you like to? You can offer it rather than, right, we are now in an emergency and we have to deal with it right now.
Yes.
So I hope that helps something, Kerry.
Yeah, it does. It does. And I liked how you were saying, just quickly, I like how you were saying before about how you have family members who are going, oh, you should be doing this and you should be doing that. And, you've got all these things happening, and then you're just like, no, they're not, I know that they're not capable of doing that, but I can ask. And I think that's the thing, like we need to empower ourselves to ask and to find out our own information.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Helen. That's amazing that what you're doing is such a gift.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you so much. I think it is too. And the gift's mine. I get the gift. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. And on that note of thank you and gratitude, I think let's declare this meeting finished and really, really appreciate all that you continually share with the SoulAdvisor community. It lights me up, and I'm sure it lights a lot of other people up too. And we hope to build an even bigger picture in people's minds for the cycle of life, and the fact that the way that you pass over, the way that you die, the end of your life, it's all part of that cycle, and it's all part of the wellness journey and making this society and this country much more well. So appreciated, really, really appreciated. Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for coming. That was
thank you everyone. It's been awesome. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you so much. And thank you, SoulAdvisor, for the amazing work you do on the planet. And thank you, Deborah and Kate, for this space to be able to do this and to sitting in such great company. It's been awesome.
I'm sure I speak for Deb too. It's a great joy, a great joy. And tomorrow we've got yet another one of the Eldership series, and the person who's coming along to join us tomorrow is a man called Simon Blow, who's talking about Qigong and coming into the breath.
Great.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to hearing what he has to tell us about his incredible and very committed journey to Qigong in the last few decades.
Wonderful.
Thank you
for speaking for me, but I was sitting on mute and saying thank you very much, Helen. So I'm sorry about that. I just got off mute.
Thank you, Deb. It's been wonderful to be here. Thank you for all you're doing and Soul Wisdom is doing. Thank you.
It's been an amazing talk. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom too.
Thanks.
Bye all. Happy Wednesday.
Take care. Bye for now.